Chip with Transworld Business Advisors. We're kind of doing a Chip's Tips. Ed, you work with Exit Factor. We kind of work together, our two companies. Introduce yourself and then kind of help me out with what you guys do and how we interact kind of quite often.
Absolutely. First, glad to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I know we partner up, but it's not often we get to be broadcast out, so I appreciate that. What Exit Factor does is we really help with the step before you would take a listing and go ahead and maximize that exit for a particular owner. We're going to be involved a little bit ahead of that so that we can help make sure that some of those things that might be red flags or deal breakers are addressed.
Addressed up front with a seller, before they're hopefully selling.
That's right, because once due diligence starts, the clock's ticking, the pressure's on, expectations are really high on both sides of the table, and when things show up there as a surprise, anything can happen. Usually it's not good.
Yeah, so help me out just a little bit more about Exit Factor, what you guys do, and then let's kind of rip into some questions if you're cool with that.
Absolutely, yeah. So we are advisors to the business owner. We work with them exclusively, and what we initially do is really help level set with them, along with you all, what the current value of that business ought to be, given market conditions, given their NICS, et cetera. What's that multiple range look like based upon their profits? But then because we go a step further and do a qualitative analysis, where we look at all kinds of different aspects of what makes for a healthy business, we're able to pinpoint a little more precisely within that range of multiples.
Right.
Because we did that work, and we look at like 80 different points of consideration, we also have a pretty good sense of those things that may be holding them back from realizing their maximum value. We can help that business owner then through a roadmap, if you will, built on those items. So out of the 80 something, maybe there's like 10 that are really the deal breakers or those things that are going to be challenging. We help them look through ways to mitigate those issues.
So you're looking for the red flags that we're looking for, and you're addressing them up front.
That's exactly right. So we call ourselves value enhancement advisors, because that's really what we're going to do. Working with that owner and on their business, we're going to help to enhance profitability, streamline processes, document things, make sure if there's concentrations, things that would make it more difficult for that next owner, whether it's a third party or some other transition, make it more difficult for them to carry on and really get the most out of that investment that they're making.
When you started this out, you talked about multiples. If somebody doesn't understand what a multiple is, what are we talking about? I know what they are, but what are we talking about?
Yeah, it's really the way that you start figuring out what a business is worth. You take the profits of that business, and depending on the type of business, you're going to multiply that number. So if your profits are $250,000 a year, and you are an accounting firm, and I'm making this up, but let's say that your typical accounting firm is going to be worth somewhere around 2 times those earnings, up to maybe 4 or 5 times those earnings. That's a pretty big range, right?
Sure it is.
So we know going in, you're an accountant, and you have a business of a certain size, and here's how much income you're throwing off of that business that you're putting in your pocket. From a buyer standpoint, some are going to look better than others, and so that's why you have this range.
Yeah, people don't realize, how different, companies can be. You can have, on paper, 2 different companies that look the same, but you might have owner involvement one, you might not have owner involvement, you might have, processes set up with one. Businesses could be night and day different, even though on paper their numbers are similar.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we know those things through just our own experience, right? We have a different expectation of what it's like to go into a certain restaurant, have a certain type of meal, and you may
restaurants aren't the same.
You may be selling burgers, right? But there's burgers, and then there's burgers.
Yeah. So let's talk about myths. I always like bringing this one up. So is there a myth that you'd like to debunk or talk about in your world?
I would say the first one is the amount that you currently are taking as the owner, net of taxes and putting in your pocket, is the profit that the buyer is going to be looking at. And I'll give you an example. So we know when we're running our businesses, and we're all small business owners, and we've had different businesses, we know that we're trying to maximize our tax benefits. So we're trying to throw every expense that we can legitimately put at that business so that we can minimize taxes. Well, how do you minimize taxes? You show the lowest possible dollar income you can. So
nobody wants to pay taxes.
No, nobody wants to pay taxes, and at the same time, nobody wants to leave money on the table when they are trying to sell what is their biggest asset, what is their life's work. So I'd say myth number one is all income is the same. And we help unwind those financials. We help make sure that we're putting things into a format that makes sense to a buyer. I think the myth number two is what got me here is what's going to get me there. So from that standpoint, that's sort of like the normal entrepreneur story, which I love. The reason I do this work is I just love helping entrepreneurs realize the value of their business, their hard work, their sweat, but also the risk they took, the sleepless nights, the tapping of the home equity to make payroll, all the things.
There's some people that go through some amazing hurdles over the years.
And it's impressive. It's astounding every time. What normally will happen though is you'll finally break through and you'll beat the odds to become profitable. And then at that moment you start to get superstitious. What I mean by that is whatever you were doing at that moment when you were successful for the first time and starting to really realize profits, you tend to lock in. And so a second myth is, I can't change anything. I can't do something to adjust my operating model, streamline some processes, maybe outsource or hand off some of the work, because at any one of those things could create the whole thing will just collapse. It's a house of cards.
Do you think that sometimes because owners become micromanagers and they get too involved and they think that just somebody else can't do it as good as they can?
I think so. I would say it in a positive way, which is if they didn't have those traits to begin with, they wouldn't have been one of those that survives.
Yeah.
Right. So you do have to change your mindset as an owner. And we can work with folks, 4 or 5 years plus in advance of actually exiting.
Right.
And so they're going to need to run that business for a while, not as they were to get there, but as they need to be for that business to maximize.
Yeah, sometimes we tell people, listen, it's the processes that are put in place have as much value as some of the things that you can actually see. Some of those intangibles are huge. They don't realize what they're doing when they put a process, put people in place, put structure together for things to run either on its own or within a little system and with some guidelines.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, I guess the summary, the way I look at it is it's not ideal for the owner to be the highest compensated, hardest working employee for that business if in fact they do want to sell it for the top dollar.
Yeah,
because who wants to buy an 80-hour week job?
Right, and that kind of, I'm going to jump questions here, but sometimes businesses don't sell, right? And there's a pretty high percentage of businesses that don't sell because people don't do those things. What do what's that number, and what can you do to make one of those businesses that doesn't look like it's going to sell to, hey, all of a sudden I can hand it over to Transworld and Chip can sell it?
Yeah, the numbers astounding. In fact, when I heard it the first time, it was one of the reasons I really decided this is where I wanted to go with my career, my business, myself, and hone in on this exit planning aspect of it. Only 20% of businesses that are listed for sale actually close.
Yeah.
And and we've got folks such as you, Chip, that you're experts at creating the listing, finding potential buyers, and doing all those things that are necessary. However, when it finally comes down to it, if that buyer can't believe that they're going to be able to take that business and continue to at least get the income out of it that shows up on paper and beyond, they're not going to do it.
Well, and if they're not ready to do it, right?